At Easter dinner, my brother bragged, "Not everyone can handle a real career in tech." My grandma looked at me and asked, "Is that why your company just bought his?" The whole table went silent. You could hear a pin drop. I smiled through Easter dinner while my brother bragged about his brilliant exit, knowing the truth would rip the table in half. Pride met facts that day, and the fallout was loud, raw, and oddly freeing. I'm Brianna Hayes, 32. I run strategic acquisitions for a major tech company. And for years, I kept that quiet, especially around my brother, James. Growing up in Portland with James felt like living in a permanent shadow. At 12, he built his first computer while I was still making friendship bracelets at school. The roles locked in early. James, the prodigy, me, the kid sister trying not to trip over his legend. "That's nice, Bri," he'd say whenever I showed him something I was proud of. That tone, the one that says this is cute but not serious, burned me up and hollowed me out at the same time. In 6th grade, I won the school science fair with a solar energy project. James immediately reminded everyone that his programming competition was much more advanced. Our parents, Richard, an accountant who couldn't program the DVR, and Kathleen, a high school English teacher, didn't mean to play favorites. But every time James launched into a monologue about code, Dad looked awestruck, Mom smiled like he was describing magic, and I understood exactly where I ranked. "Your brother has a special gift," they'd tell me. Not everyone thinks that way. The pattern stuck through high school. I thrived in business classes and leadership roles. He racked up robotics trophies. When college rolled around, James got into MIT with a partial scholarship for computer science. I chose the University of Washington for business. Great school, great program. He still smirked, "Business? I guess not everyone can handle the rigor of a real STEM program." Dad would murmur, "James, be nice to your sister," and then immediately ask for an update on his latest code. Message received. The only person who ever really saw me was my grandmother, Eleanor. At 78, she carried an iPad like a general and ran circles around my parents on a smartphone. She'd been a mathematics professor in the 1970s when women in her field were rare. She understood what it meant to be overlooked and underestimated. One Christmas break during my sophomore year, when James dominated dinner with stories about his internship at Google, she found me in the kitchen, rinsing plates with tears I wouldn't admit to. "They don't see it yet," she told me, her voice steady. "But you have something just as valuable as technical knowledge, Brianna. You understand people and systems. You see the big picture. That matters in technology, too." So I leaned into that. I graduated with honors and landed a marketing job at a small tech firm called DG Path. James rolled his eyes at my graduation dinner. "Marketing for a tech company? So, you'll make pretty brochures for products you don't understand." I swallowed my anger and got to work. I didn't just learn the messaging. I learned the product. I sat with engineers until I could explain our tech to a non-technical client without breaking a sweat. I took night classes in basic programming, not to become a developer, but to speak fluently with the people building what I was selling. Within 3 years, I'd become marketing director. 2 years later, I got recruited by Synergy Tech, a major player in enterprise software. Every step forward, James dismissed. When I joined Synergy Tech, he hijacked the conversation to pitch his new startup idea. When I was promoted to team lead, he announced his seed funding. When I became department head, he casually mentioned being featured in a tech blog. Family dinners turned into James' TED Talks. He'd throw around neural networks and blockchain architecture at the table like confetti, no explanation, just enough jargon to freeze out anyone who didn't speak his language. "Don't worry if you don't get it," he'd say, especially to me. "It's pretty complex stuff." Our parents would beam. I'd go quiet. And across the table, Grandma Eleanor would give me a slow wink. "Patience," her look said. "Your time is coming." I didn't expect it to arrive the way it did. 7 years into my career at Synergy Tech, I was appointed Director of Strategic Acquisitions. My job became finding promising companies to buy, teams with great technology that needed resources, distribution, and structure to survive and scale. I had found my sweet spot, translating between technical brilliance and market reality. One ordinary afternoon, my assistant Parker dropped a file on my desk. "Potential acquisition target," he said. "Small team, strong IP, burning cash." Classic. I opened the report and froze. Founder, James Hayes. My brother's company, Nextier, had developed a genuinely clever machine learning approach that could strengthen our flagship product. Their engineering was solid. Their business wasn't. They were bleeding funds with minimal revenue, customer acquisition costs were through the roof, the marketing strategy was inconsistent, and profitability had no defined path. All the things James called not real tech? That's where Nextier was sinking. My stomach flipped. I scheduled a meeting with our Chief Strategy Officer, Monica Reynolds. "I need to disclose a conflict of interest," I told her the second I sat down. "The founder of Nextier is my brother." Monica raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize your brother was in tech." "Oh, trust me," I said dryly. "He's made sure everyone knows. He just doesn't advertise that his sister works for the corporate sellout." We put guardrails in place immediately. I recused myself from direct negotiations, but stayed involved in an advisory capacity. I'd document every communication. The acquisition needed to make sense on its own merits, not because this was my family. By the book. No exceptions. 3 months of due diligence confirmed what I already suspected: brilliant tech, failing business. And despite the complicated knot in my chest, I found myself advocating for the deal. Nextier's engineers deserved stability, James's IP deserved a real chance, and our company would materially benefit. This was one of those rare moments where doing the right thing for business also felt like the right thing for people. James, meanwhile, had no idea. He kept talking down to me at family dinners, lecturing me about markets I literally analyzed for a living, while I quietly tracked his runway and signed off on risk assessments for his burn rate. The acquisition closed a week before Easter. Nextier would become a Synergy Tech subsidiary. Their technology would be integrated into our platform. James would stay on as a technical advisor for a year, reporting to a manager who reported to me. The terms were generous. More generous than Nextier's numbers justified. But we were paying for talent and IP, not revenue. As the Easter invitation pinged my inbox, anxiety started humming behind my ribs. Do I tell him? Tell everyone? Warn him before dinner? I called Grandma. "You've done nothing wrong," she said, crisp as ever. "You built this career. You've handled the conflict ethically. If your brother has misrepresented his success or underestimated yours, that's his to reconcile." "It's going to be so awkward," I moaned. "Perhaps," she conceded, and I could hear her smile. "But sometimes a little awkwardness is necessary for growth. Show up. Be yourself. Let the truth find its way to the table." So that was the plan. I wouldn't lie if asked. But I wasn't going to strut in and announce myself either. Let James tell his story first. I wanted to see how he'd spin his exit. Easter Sunday arrived like a cruel joke. Blue sky, blooming trees, perfect spring air. My boyfriend, Michael, squeezed my hand as we pulled up to my parents' house. He's a high school history teacher with zero interest in tech drama and the emotional intelligence of a therapist. "Remember, you did nothing wrong," he murmured. "And I'm here." Inside, James was already holding court by the fireplace, gesturing like a startup founder in a VC pitch. His wife, Heather, sweet and grounded, a pediatric nurse, stood beside him, smiling politely. Dad and my Uncle Dave listened like he was explaining the blockchain to a tribe that still barters with shells. Heather saw me first and hugged me warmly. "Brianna. Too long." James tossed a "hey, sis" at me, nodded at Michael, and immediately pivoted back to his audience. Anyway, as I was saying, the exit strategy worked perfectly. You have to know when to cash in your chips. Exit strategy. I almost laughed. "Tech is volatile," he continued, palms up like a preacher. "But if you know what you're doing, you position yourself for maximum leverage." Dad beamed. James was just telling us about the acquisition. Sounds like quite a deal. I kept my face neutral. "Congratulations, James." He shrugged, falsely modest. "Just how the game is played. Not everyone understands long-term strategy. Brianna works in tech too, Michael offered, bless his well-meaning heart. James chuckled. Marketing for a corporate giant isn't the same as founding and exiting a startup. Before I could respond, Mom called from the kitchen. Brianna, can you help me with the deviled eggs? I escaped to the kitchen, where Grandma was already arranging appetizers like an artist. How's our tech mogul spinning it? She asked, eyes twinkling. He's acting like it was all his master plan, I whispered. Men like your brother often rewrite history to protect their egos, she replied. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What can I do? Stand up and announce that my company saved his. You could, she said calmly. Or you could simply tell the truth if asked. Not to humiliate him, because truth matters. Especially in families. Wouldn't it be better to keep the peace? Peace built on falsehood isn't peace. It's suppression. She rested a warm hand over mine. You have spent your whole life dimming your light so James could shine brighter. Maybe it's time to stop. The next hour was a whirlwind of food prep and family arrivals. Aunt Linda and Uncle Rob, Uncle Dave with his family, Cousin Amy and her new baby, the whole suburban symphony. Through it all, I could hear James inflate his legend from the living room. Grandma leaned over as we set the table. Stand tall, she murmured. Don't force it. The truth has a way of finding its moment. Dinner was our usual production. Honey glazed ham, scalloped potatoes, green bean casserole, Mom's famous yeast rolls, the good china, the crystal glasses that only appear when the house is spotless and the stakes are high. Aunt Linda lifted her glass. To family, to spring, to new beginnings. And to success, James added quickly. To new ventures and knowing when to cash out. We drank. We passed dishes. We chatted safe topics. And then, as always, James got bored of ordinary conversation. Dad, he said, slicing his ham, I've been thinking about advising you on your retirement portfolio. After this acquisition, I've got insights into where tech is headed. We could really maximize your returns. Dad looked impressed. That would be great, son. What about you, Brianna? Aunt Linda asked. How's work? Still at the same company. James started. I'm at Synergy Tech, I said, level. Right, he waved, dismissive. Anyway, the real action is in startups. Corporate tech is where innovation goes to die. I set my fork down. The problem with corporate environments, he rolled on, is they're full of people who couldn't cut it as entrepreneurs. No offense, Bree. He smiled like someone who just tossed a grenade and considered it good sport. Mom tried. James, your sister has been, I'm sure she's great at whatever marketing stuff she does, he said, voice dripping with condescension. But it's not the same as building something from nothing. Silence fell like a curtain. Michael's jaw clenched. I stared at my plate and focused on breathing evenly. The tech industry separates visionaries from support staff, James concluded, eyes on me. Some people innovate. Others support. Not everyone can handle a real career in tech. The room went quiet enough to hear the chandelier buzz. Then Grandma, in her classroom voice, is that why your sister's company just bought yours? Time stopped. Forks clinked. Head snapped. James blinked like he'd been slapped. What? He sputtered. What are you talking about? I'm simply asking, Grandma said mildly, if that's why Synergy Tech acquired Nextier. Because they're the real tech innovators. Murmurs. Dad looked baffled. Brianna's company bought James's. What does that mean? James's face flamed. That's not what happened, he stammered. Yes, we were acquired, but it was a strategic exit. I chose to sell. And Brianna had nothing to do with it. She works in marketing, for God's sake. All eyes swung to me. For a split second, I considered masking it. Then I remembered that's nice, Bree. Actually, I said, voice steady, I'm the director of strategic acquisitions at Synergy Tech. I've been in that role almost 2 years. He gaped. That's impossible. You would have said something. When would I have mentioned it? I asked softly. Between your blockchain lectures and your explanations of why my work isn't real tech? Dad, still trying to catch up, you were involved in buying James's company? Bree's lying, James snapped. If she worked in acquisitions, I'd have known. My team dealt with Synergy executives. Your team dealt with my team, I corrected. I recused myself from direct negotiations because of our relationship. But yes, I was involved in an advisory capacity, and I was the one who originally flagged next tier as a target. The silence broke with Heather's quiet voice. It's true. I saw Brianna's name on some preliminary paperwork. I assumed you knew. You knew? James hissed at her and didn't tell me? I thought you knew, she said, hurt and confused. Why wouldn't you? Because she's lying, he said, then shoved back his chair so hard it screeched. This is sabotage. You targeted my company. You couldn't stand that I was winning, so you had to take over. Your company was 3 months from bankruptcy, I said evenly. Great tech. No sustainable business model. The acquisition saved your engineers' jobs, protected your investors, and preserved your reputation. How dare you? He was nearly shouting. You don't know anything about tech. Business isn't tech, James' mom tried desperately. Please, I will not calm down, he barked. She's undermined me our whole lives, and now she wants to claim she saved my company? That's rich. I looked around the table, my family's faces stunned, uncertain. I felt something inside me shift. I'm not claiming to have saved anything, I said. I'm telling the truth. Next tier had valuable IP and talented engineers. That's why we bought it. It was a business decision, not personal. He laughed, short and ugly. Is that why you never mentioned your role? Because it was so impersonal. I never mentioned it because you never asked, I said simply. You were too busy explaining why what you do matters more. The words hung in the air like a bell toll. James opened his mouth, closed it again. Then he turned and stormed out. The front door slammed. No one moved. Uncle Rob finally cleared his throat. Well, that was unexpected. Aunt Linda turned to me, eyes soft. Honey, I had no idea you were so high up. Why didn't you tell us? I looked around at my parents' confusion, at Heather's embarrassment, at Grandma's steady pride. A weight I'd carried for years, the one that told me to stay small, started to lift. I guess no one asked, I said quietly. Heather looked stricken. Grandma, with gentle authority, stepped in. Perhaps this is a good moment for Brianna to tell us what she actually does. Yes, please, Mom said, voice trembling. We want to know. So I told them. I explained how acquisitions work, scouting companies with promising tech, evaluating fit with Synergy Tech's portfolio, structuring deals that are fair and sustainable, navigating due diligence, integrating teams without crushing their innovation. I kept it factual, professional. Dad shook his head slowly. 9 years at one company, in tech? That's impressive. Michael squeezed my hand under the table. Extremely. And next here? Dad asked carefully. How did that happen? I laid it out plainly. They built something genuinely innovative. Our technical team was impressed. But the business fundamentals weren't there yet. The acquisition aligned their tech with our resources. So you saved them, Aunt Linda said. We made a deal that benefited both sides, I corrected gently. Synergy got IP and talent. Next year's investors got an outcome better than failure. Their employees got stability. James got a path to keep working on technology he loves. Heather spoke up, voice low but steady. We were drowning. He wouldn't admit it. Not to you, not to me. He put everything into the company. Our savings. A second mortgage. We were 3 missed payrolls away from disaster. Synergy's offer was a miracle. My chest tight. I didn't know it was that serious. She nodded. He couldn't see it as help. He saw it as failure. Dad looked stricken. Why didn't he tell us? We could have pride, Grandma said. And a family story that hasn't served us well. We sat with that. Then I pushed back my chair. I'll talk to him, I said. Michael squeezed my hand. You sure? It's been cooling down for years, I told Mom. I think it's time. I found James on the front steps, staring at the quiet street like it might argue back. Come to gloat? He asked, not looking at me. No, I said. I came to talk. Actually talk. He let out a bitter laugh. What's left to say? You won. This isn't a game, James. Easy for the winner to say. Do you really think I would jeopardize my career, my ethics, just to get back at you? I asked, heat rising. I recused. We documented everything. You weren't my target. You were my responsibility, as a sister and as someone who believes in good tech being supported by good business. Silence. Then, quieter, When did you become director of acquisitions? 2 years ago. And you never thought to mention it? When would I have? You've never asked me about my work. Not once. He flinched. I just assumed. You assumed I was still entry-level in marketing because that fit your narrative, I said, not unkindly. And it made it easier to feel like the only real tech person in the family. He rubbed his hands over his face. For the first time all night, he sounded like my brother, not my rival. Next tier was really failing, wasn't it? The technology was solid, I said carefully. But yes, the business side was in trouble. I kept thinking the next funding round would fix everything, he admitted. We'd miss a milestone or barely hit it, and I'd move the goalposts. It felt survivable if I could just make it to the next thing. It's common, I said. It's also why most startups don't make it. He swallowed. I don't know who I am if I'm not the tech genius. You're a tech genius, I said. Your code is brilliant. Next year's core innovation is real. But building a company takes more than code. It takes market sense, strategy, people skills. The things you've dismissed as secondary? They're not. They're half the equation. He grimaced. The things you're good at. I nodded. We could have been a team. He let out a breath that sounded like the end of a fight he'd been losing quietly for a long time. I've been an ass. I laughed. Yeah, you have. Can I blame it on programmer arrogance? You can try, I grinned. But I work with plenty of engineers who don't condescend to their sisters. He looked over, shame finally giving way to sincerity. I'm sorry, Bree. I didn't realize how awful I sounded until I heard it out loud. Thank you. So what now? He asked. With next tier. With me. That's partly up to you, I said. Your tech has real potential as part of our enterprise suite. If you can put the ego aside and collaborate, there's a place for you. You'd report to Marcus, he's brilliant. You'd learn a ton. Working for my little sister's company, he said automatically, but there was no bite to it. Working with a company that values your expertise, I corrected. He nodded slowly. I need to think. Don't think too long, I said gently. You know how fast this world moves. We sat together in a quiet that wasn't friendly exactly, but wasn't hostile either. It felt like the first honest silence we'd shared in years. Mom's probably panicking, I said finally. Yeah, he said, standing. This is going to be awkward. Probably. But maybe it's time we stop pretending. No more pretending, he said, offering me a hand. I took it. We walked inside. Conversation died when we walked into the dining room. Heather's shoulders sagged in relief. Mom hovered. Dad braced. We sat. Uncle Rob cleared his throat. Shall we, continue dinner? Yes, I said. Please. The conversation limped forward. James was unusually quiet. Then, as Mom cut the lemon meringue pie, he stood up. I owe everyone an apology, he said. The room held its breath. Especially you, Brianna. He looked at the tablecloth like it might steady him. I haven't been honest about next year. We were struggling badly. Synergy's acquisition wasn't my brilliant exit strategy. It was a lifeline. He swallowed. And I've been dismissive and condescending about Brianna's career for years. I was wrong. She's accomplished more than I wanted to see. I should have celebrated her instead of, whatever this was. Mom's eyes filled. Dad stared, stunned. Grandma smiled like a chess player seeing a move finally made. We had no idea, Dad said to James, voice thick. Why didn't you? Tell us. Pride, I guess, James admitted. I've always been the successful one. Saying I failed didn't fit the part. Success isn't never failing, Mom said softly. It's how you handle it. Grandma lifted her water. And perhaps we've been clapping too loudly for the wrong act, she said gently, eyes on me. There's been another success story unfolding quietly in this family. We should have noticed sooner. Dad turned to me remorseful. We owe you an apology too, sweetheart. We should have asked more, celebrated more, understood more. I'm sorry. And proud, Mom added, blinking back tears. So proud. Warmth and discomfort mixed in my chest. Validation feels strange when you've lived on crumbs for so long. Thank you, I managed. So what happens now? Aunt Linda asked. With the company. James looked to me, deference that startled me. I explained the plan. Next year's technology would be integrated into Synergy's platform. Their team had the option to join us. James had a 1-year contract as a technical advisor. After that, we'd reassess. And will you stay on? Uncle Rob asked James. I'm considering it, he said, glancing at me and Heather. It would be a different role. But maybe it's time I learned the business side. It was the closest he'd ever come to naming my strengths out loud. I met him halfway. The best tech happens when different kinds of expertise sit at the same table, I said. Technical brilliance and business acumen aren't rivals. They're partners. Like brother and sister, Grandma said, wry and wise. James actually laughed. Exactly like that. For the rest of the evening, we didn't perform. We talked. James asked me for the first time what my job really entailed. I asked him about the hardest technical challenges he'd solved this year. Our family watched us recalibrate in real time. As we cleared plates, Dad pulled me aside. Why didn't you tell us? He asked again, genuinely pained. I think I said, honest to the bone, it was easier to be invisible than fight for space that wasn't being offered. We all fell into a story. He winced. We should have noticed. It's okay, I said. We can write a better story now. Later, in the living room, Grandma lifted her coffee with matriarchal command. A toast, she said. To James, whose technical brilliance creates valuable innovation. And to Brianna, whose business acumen ensures that innovation reaches its potential. May they both continue to succeed, perhaps even together. We raised our cups. James caught my eye and tipped his toward me. It was small. It meant everything. As people packed up leftovers and hugged goodbye, James found me one more time. I meant what I said, he murmured. I'm sorry. I know, I said. Thank you. I'm going to take the position, he added. At Synergy. I have a lot to learn about the business side. I smiled. Good. You've got access to a pretty decent teacher. Deal, he said, grinning. He stuck out his hand. I hugged him instead. Happy Easter, James. Happy Easter, Brie. And for the first time in years, my nickname sounded like love instead of a jab. On the drive home, Michael glanced over. How do you feel? I sat with it. Like a knot I've lived with forever finally started to loosen. It's uncomfortable. And it's freeing. Your grandmother, he said, shaking his head, is a force. Oh, I know. She's been waiting for that showdown for years. Think things will change? They already have, I said. Now we see if they stick. They did. 3 months later, James and I were having our Tuesday ritual lunch in the Synergy Tech cafeteria. He was animated, eyes bright. We reworked the algorithm pipeline, he said, sliding his tray aside to sketch on a napkin. Processing speed is up 37%. Marcus thinks if we restructure the data flow again, we can squeeze out more. That's fantastic, I said, genuinely excited. Enterprise clients will flip for a 37% boost. He smirked. It's actually building on a suggestion from your data science team. He rolled his eyes at himself. Turns out there are smart people at this corporate sellout. We both laughed. Watching him adjust to a larger org had been fascinating. He bristled at approvals. He spoke too bluntly in his first HR meeting. But he was learning. And maybe the biggest shock, he was starting to enjoy the resources that came with scale. How's Marcus? I asked, referring to his manager. Good, he said. Knows his stuff. Doesn't micromanage. I'm learning a lot about project management and team leadership. He lifted his hands in surrender. Still a work in progress. Managing people is not intuitive. Welcome to my side of the house, I grinned. You'll get there. Our parents had visited the campus the week before. Dad alternated between pride and confusion, asking questions only someone who grew up balancing checkbooks could ask. Mom cried in the lobby, then demanded a full tour. They're still processing, James said. 20 years of thinking I was the only tech kid, and suddenly you've been quietly outranking me. Not outranking, I said. Different paths. Different skills. Fair enough. Dinner at Grandma's this weekend? He asked. She wants both of us. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Her pot roast is worth any pop quiz she's planning. She's subtle as a sledgehammer, he said affectionately. But effective. At Grandma's, after the pot roast and the stories, she fixed us both with that professor stare. How are my two tech executives getting along? Better than expected, James said. I'm learning to accept feedback without treating it like an insult. And I'm learning to give feedback that doesn't sound like a compliance training, I shot back. Grandma nodded, pleased. Good. Honesty, kindly delivered, is the backbone of family. I took a breath. I've been thinking about that. For years, we kept a fiction alive, James as the only tech success story. Me as the supporting cast. James because it was comfortable. Me because it felt safer than fighting. And the rest of the family because they didn't know to question it. James nodded. Being the star felt good. But it stunned me. I didn't learn what I didn't have to. And I missed an ally because I treated my sister like a competitor. Grandma turned to me. And you? Silence isn't peace, I said. Dimming myself didn't protect anyone. It just hid me. Authenticity is uncomfortable, but it's the only way to be known. She smiled, proud. Now, keep those lessons. Family patterns love a comeback tour. We're working on it, I promised. We kept working on it. He asked for my input on leading his team. I asked for his perspective on technical diligence in upcoming deals. Our parents started asking me real questions. Dad began forwarding me articles about women in tech leadership and signing his emails, proud dad. Mom started bragging about both of us in the same breath. The biggest change, though, was inside me. I stopped shrinking. I corrected misperceptions. I took up space. And at work, that steadiness made me a better leader. Here's what I know now. The truth didn't blow my family apart. It rebuilt us on something real. On a foundation where achievements aren't competitions, strengths aren't threats, and being known is worth more than being impressive. Sometimes the bravest disruption isn't in code or products or markets. It's at your own dinner table. If you've ever had a moment where speaking your truth changed a relationship, I'm rooting for you. And I hope you find your version of that Easter scary, messy, honest, and absolutely worth it.